Hey, Chris Dritt here. Today I want to walk through secure file downloads using Webflow, MemberStack, Integromat, and a new one, Amazon Web Services, better known as AWS. This is really cool. It's really simple from a user experience perspective. Let's give it a try. So I've published the site. Let's open it up. It's a simple course site. We're going to go and enroll, sign up. This is just test mode, but you pay your $49 a month to access it. Immediately you are dropped into the lessons page. This is all pretty simple, basic stuff. All of the lessons are downloadable PDF files. Files could be anything really, but in this example they're going to be PDFs. So let's click on the first one, see what happens. Boom, there it is, Lesson 1 PDF. Yeah, okay, big deal. I downloaded a file. All right, let's check out what's really cool about this. Let's open up another tab, the home page. Let's go into here and sign out. We're no longer logged into MemberStack. We'll go back to our original tab. Now, if I refresh this page, of course, MemberStack will handle kicking me out of it and I can't access the page. But what happens now if I click on one of these links? Can I still access the download? Let's try it. Oh no, I can't. Look at that. I'm redirected out to a 404 page. No download occurred. Ah, that's wonderful. So what happened there is we are actually authenticating on every click of a download that you are a currently logged in user within MemberStack. And if you're not, we kick you out. So how in the world do we know that when you click a link or submit a form that you're a logged in member in MemberStack? MemberStack doesn't provide this natively for you. This isn't functionality that they have, but we're working around it because they do offer something to us that we can use called a JSON Web Token, or J.W.T. This J.W.T token works in a similar way to cookies on a browser. The difference being that the J.W.T token is used by developers to authenticate across an API backend instead of through the web browser. And you can read all about that here at JWT.io introduction. They go into great detail about what JSON Web Tokens are and how they're used. What's interesting for us is if you go over to the MemberStack Help Center, you can type in JWT, verifying MemberStack tokens. It's not a very detailed description of what this does. JWT tokens really are meant for developers and not the no-coders, but we're going to use it anyways. So we can get that from MemberStack by making this call. It asks for the token and they send it to us. So MemberStack has now sent us the J.W.T token for the currently logged in user. We need to take that token, add it to the hidden form field so that when we submit our form to our Integromat backend, we have access to that J.W.T token and we can authenticate it. So let's grab that custom code and go up to my GitHub account. You can see it's github.com, no code quest, secure file downloads. We can click on the lessons.html, which is the page that we're currently on. And we can see if we look in here that we have the MemberStack get token. It's exactly what they recommend we use in order to get that J.W.T token from them. So now we've grabbed that token. If we scroll down a little bit more, you can see in this part, we're going to take that token and we're going to inject it into a hidden form field. You don't really have to understand all of this if you don't want to. What I recommend is you click this raw button, select all, copy, come back into Webflow, into the lessons setting page, scroll down to the bottom, and you can see it's already pasted here, but you just paste it right in. Now MemberStack has sent us the J.W.T token. We've taken that token, we've added it to a hidden form field, and when the user submits the form, it gets passed up into Integromat. We hook into Integromat by taking the Integromat webhooks URL that they provided us, adding it to our forms action with the post method, And that gets us into our back end. We have a custom webhook module that's triggered from our form action. Next, we go to the Authenticate token module. This is really an HTTP module that we use to send the J.W.T token up to Amazon Web Services, authenticates against MemberStack, meaning this is a currently logged in user. We then want to verify that the member is part of our website. So when we authenticate the J.W.T token, it's just asking the question, is this somebody who's logged into the MemberStack backend? Not necessarily our website, but across the entire MemberStack platform. So if the answer to that is yes, we need to narrow it down by the verify member module, which is going to take the member ID that's embedded within that J.W.T token that we've confirmed is authenticated, and we're going to query the MemberStack backend and try to get that member for our website specifically. Now, if that doesn't work, if either the authentication or the verifying a member doesn't work, we'll go down this failure path, which will just send a redirect back to the web browser with the URL that we pass in the form. In this case, what you saw I did was a 404. You can do anything you want. But if that is authenticated, if it passes these two checks, then we can go download the file. We're going to store all the files up in Amazon Web Services. They're going to be private, secured, password protected, so nobody can just surf to it on the web and get these files. And then once the file's downloaded to Integromat, we'll send that back to the web browser so it downloads onto your user's file system. Pretty awesome, huh? Okay, let's watch this run through Integromat under a couple of different scenarios. Tap the Run Once button. It's already set up to capture this in an interactive mode. Go back to the lesson. You can see I'm logged in. Go to the home, access your courses. Let's download lesson 1 and watch it go through Integromat. Boom, custom webhook got triggered, authenticate token, verify member. We downloaded the file and we replied with the file. That's pretty quick, huh? There's the file. And here it is in my local file system. We can see lesson 1, there is no speed limit. All right, that's pretty cool. Let's try that again, and let's do a failure redirect, because this time we're gonna log out. Come on back in here. We'll open this up in a new tab. We'll say sign out. Close the tab. Now, again, if I refresh this page, I'll be redirected away from it since I'm no longer logged in. But clicking this link now, I should not be able to download the file. Let's give it a try. Nice, worked great. Got the failure redirect 302. We have our custom headers in here and it redirected us to our 404 page. Very nice. That's fantastic. Okay, great. So this is working pretty darn good right now. Okay, this is the fun part. How do we actually authenticate that J.W.T token that was passed up through the hidden form field with MemberStack? Let's dig into it, high-level overview, and then let's go set it up. So if we look into the Authenticate module, we'll clearly see that this is nothing more than an HTTP module. And what we're going to do is, once we create our Amazon account, Amazon is going to provide us a URL, much like Integromat does when we set up a custom webhook. And that URL we're going to add here, and that's our endpoint. Sitting behind that URL is some custom code that we're going to copy and paste that does the authentication with the J.W.T token against MemberStack. So once we set up Amazon, we'll get this URL, we'll paste it into here. We'll use the post method. We're also going to set up an API key for this URL so that it's not open to the public. We'll put the API key in here. We'll scroll down a little bit, body type raw, content type JSON, and here's the interesting part in that we're going to pass up a little blob of JSON here, and you can copy and paste this from my GitHub account. We'll pass in the J.W.T token that came up in our hidden form field, and we'll also pass in the URL that we want to authenticate against with MemberStack. If we go back to the MemberStack docs, remember we're in the verifying MemberStack token J.W.T library for MemberStack. Scrolling down to the bottom, they give us the URL to find the public keys that we need to authenticate against. So we're going to pass that in right up here. And that's it. That's what we do to authenticate. All right, let's set up the AWS account so that we can get a URL endpoint, copy and paste some code behind it, get authenticated. So to do that, flip over to aws.amazon.com. Once you're in here, create an AWS account. This will be a free account. They're going to ask you to add your credit card. Don't worry, they're not going to charge you. You get 12 months for free. You can see all the details if you go to this URL right here. You want to double check that for your region that they give you everything for free. For mine, they do. Once you're done with your 12 months, this is a really cheap solution, especially for all the power you get. Okay, once you've signed up, make sure you're in the AWS Management Console, and this is where we'll get started setting up our back-end services. AWS Lambda. Yep, that's the real name they've given it. I told you, this is really for developers, but forget all that. We're going to use it. We shouldn't be intimidated by it. It's super powerful. It's very reasonably priced, and it's going to accomplish all the goals that we need for this feature. So AWS Lambda, you've probably heard a more common term, and that term is serverless. This is serverless. And what does serverless mean? Well, serverless means you don't have to manage the servers. Of course, there are servers behind the scenes here running your code, but you don't have to manage them. You don't have to set them up. You don't have to config them. You don't have to maintain them. They do all of that for you. So let's get started. We're in the AWS Management Console. We'll go find services, type Lambda. Select Lambda, we'll go into it. You can see I already have one created. Let's go create another one really fast just so I can demonstrate what we're doing. Create function, author from scratch, function name, we'll call this Authenticate J.W.T 2. We want to select Node.js version 12.x. That's it, create function. And boom, there it is. We have created our first serverless function. One thing to be aware of is the region that you've set this up in. That's really important to remember. If we look here, we have different regions that we can select, and a region is where the physical server network is located. And you want to think of regions much like a folder system on your local file system. If I switch to a different region, think of it like switching to a different folder. None of my functions or any of the settings that I've set up will exist in a different region. So make sure you always check the region that you're in. If you log into your account and you don't see any of your functions, the first thing you want to do is make sure you're in the correct region. Okay, so now that we have this set up, you can see they gave us some test code. We're going to ignore that. What we're going to do now is grab my existing code and put it in here. So let's go back to the GitHub account. This is where we were when we last left off. We'll go back into secure file downloads. And what we have here, you can see, is authenticate JWT.zip. So what I want you to do is download that zip file. Once it's downloaded, the next thing we want to do is scroll down, and inside of the function code section, click the action button, and we want to upload a zip file. Here we are. That's the file we just downloaded. Let's click save. All right, excellent. We have my custom code here, the index.js, and it takes advantage of all these library files that I've included. And what we're doing is taking the J.W.T token that we passed up in the request body and the URL. Remember, if we go back to Integromat, here is what we passed up, the J.W.T token and a URL. So this is what we're grabbing out of here, the URL and the J.W.T token. We're running it through a library called JSON Web Token. What this does is it allows us to authenticate that J.W.T token against the key on the other side of that URL. Remember, that's MemberStack. It's their public key, and that's what authenticates all of this. When it's done and it's successful, it returns a status code of 200 to Integromat, and it also passes back the ID, email, and site. What the ID is really the member ID. Email is the member's email, obviously, and site is your MemberStack website ID. And that's it. We're done. Code's up. Let's hit the deploy button. That actually makes it live, much like publishing in Webflow. The next thing we're going to want to do is set up a URL so that whenever we call that URL, this code gets run. Let's do that now. Scrolling back up to the top, this is the code we just uploaded. We want to add something called a trigger. We want to select an API gateway from it. We want to create an API. We want to select REST API. We want to select API key from security. This makes it so it's not public. You have to have this API key in order to access this URL. And that's it. Click the add button. Boom, it's just that simple. We've created an API gateway with a URL that when called with a key will run this code. So if we scroll down a little bit while this is still highlighted, you can see that we have the API gateway down here. We want to expand the details section, and here is our endpoint. This is the URL we want to copy and paste into Integromat. And just to confirm that you can't actually access this, let's click it. Message forbidden. We didn't pass an API key, so we can't access it. That's great. It's exactly what we want. They've also given us the API key that we need to access this API endpoint. And this is the API key we're going to copy and paste into Integromat. This is the API key for my existing one, not the one we just set up. You want to give it the name x-api-key. The name is very important because that tells AWS that this is the API key they're looking for. So make sure you get that name right. Back into our original tab, and this is the API endpoint URL, so we can highlight it, copy it, and this is where you would put it. Now you can see it has my other one in there. I'm not going to paste this in right now. Make sure the method is post. Make sure you have your API key headers, raw, JSON, and you can get this request content snippet from my site. This highlighted J.W.T, you can see when we click in there, we're just selecting the J.W.T hidden field that came from our custom webhook. It's really simple. Parse response, check that, and you're done. You've just set up authentication with MemberStack to verify that this is a currently logged in user. Okay, so the J.W.T token has been authenticated against MemberStack. Next, let's go and verify the member. So what we need to do here is take the authenticated information that was returned to us from this module and use it to query the MemberStack's backend API and make sure that that member is a member on our website. So first thing we're going to do is we need to add a connection, which is really grabbing the API key out of MemberStack for our MemberStack website. So let's go check out where that is. If you go into your MemberStack account, you go into Power-Ups, Integrations, scroll down to the bottom, Custom Integrations. You can see API keys. You can just add a new API key. I've already added one. They give you an API key, you copy it, you come back in here, boom, you add it, and you're done. This will set up the connection. Then what we want to do is pass in the member ID, which is noted as ID that was returned from our Authenticate token module. Now, this whole user object here with the ID, email, and site is only returned to us if the J.W.T token was authenticated. If it wasn't, this won't exist. So we can put this in here and feel confident that if it exists, it's been authenticated. If it doesn't exist, we are going to set up a failure route, which I'll show you in just a moment. But that's it. Okay, so you'll remember when I was logged out of our course site and I tried to download a file, it wouldn't allow me to do that because I was no longer logged in, I wasn't authenticated, and it redirected me to a 404 page. Well, let's set up that scenario right now. That's going to be our failure redirect. And what we want to do here is right-click on the Verify Member module. And unfortunately, I don't have this in the pop-up menu because I've already selected it and set it up. But just for demonstration purposes, let's right-click on the module before it, and we want to add error handler. And you'll see what happens is it adds up a new route. It gives us a search box. We want to select webhooks, webhook response. We'll close that, and you can see that that's exactly what we're looking for. So let's delete this one. Let's auto align it again. And once you select add error handler, but on the verify member module, and you've selected the webhook response, you want to add a 302 webhook response. You want to add a custom header. You want to type in the word location here, and it needs to be exactly as it is spelled here with a capital L. That matters. And we want to select the redirect to URL that we passed up in a hidden form field in our form submit. Now that's all embedded in the custom code that I provided, so you can go in there and change it to anything you like. But in this case, what you saw demonstrated was a 404 page. So that's where I'm redirecting people to. If either the Authenticate token or the Verify Member modules fail, you'll go down the failure redirect path. Something else I like to do, but isn't necessarily required, I call this extra credit, is to set up a filter on the Verify Member module. So in order to continue down the authenticated path, you have to meet a series of conditions. And what I'm doing is checking that the Authenticate token module returned a status code of 200. I'm checking that the Authenticate module has a user ID in there and it's equal to the member ID that was returned from our Verify Member. Same thing here, we verified that the email address returned from the Authenticate token module matches the email returned to us from MemberStack. Unfortunately, MemberStack isn't going to give us a site ID. I'm not sure why they don't do that through their API, but they don't. So for that piece of data, I'm just checking that it exists. Again, this is extra credit. I like to add this. You do as you please. If these conditions fail, we're not going to be sent down this failed redirect route, unfortunately. So you'll have to set up a new path in order to have a good user experience. Totally up to you. All right, so we covered the failure redirect path. Now let's cover the authenticated path. So if Authenticate token and Verify Member work, then we'll go down a success path and actually download the file. So the files are stored up in Amazon Web Services called S3. If we open this up, we can see that we're in an AWS S3 module, so that's what you want to add. And we need to add a connection. You give it a connection name. We need to add an access key and an access secret key. So let's figure out how to do that first. What's really nice about this is Integromat has a help file that I followed, and it worked perfect to set this up. So let's go to the Integromat Help Center, type in AWS S3, do a search. Here it is. And this is the help file that tells you step by step how to set up a user inside of AWS that will have access to your S3 bucket. Now, what we call folders on our local file system, S3 calls buckets. So a bucket is basically just a folder. And this help article will walk you through setting up a user in AWS that has access to an S3 bucket. So that way all of your files are secure, private, and protected, and nobody on the open internet can just navigate to a URL and download all your stuff. So in here, we'll see that users in AWS are called IAM, Identity and Access Management. So follow these instructions. Click this link to get into AWS IAM Home, which is this page, and you'll add a user. Want to check programmatic access. You want to go search for S3, and just as they do here, select the Amazon S3 full access. Click next. The tags you can skip. You want to get all the way to the end. You can skip all steps until you get to the Create User button. Go ahead and click that button. And now you've created a user. I've named mine Integromat just as they have here. And they give you the access key ID and secret access key. Those are the two pieces that are being asked for right here. Access key, secret access key. So what I recommend is you click this download link and you get a CSV that has these two IDs inside of it, and you'll be all set up with a connection. Next, we want to select the region and the bucket, but we first have to set those up in order for Integromat to see them through this connection. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Go back into your AWS Management Console, go to the Find Services search box, and type in S3, Scalable Storage in the Cloud. That will take you to your buckets screen. Again, a bucket is just a folder. And you can see I've already set one up, but let's go ahead and create a bucket here just quickly. Give it a name. You want to select the region, and this is important again. You'll notice that in this screen we're in the global region, but they're asking you where do you want these files to be stored. And I would just recommend that you store these files in the same region that you selected for your Lambda function with your API gateway. In my case, I did the US West region. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your bucket settings are blocking all public access. Again, we don't want anybody to grab a URL and go to our bucket and download all of our files. We only want authenticated users with that IAM user you just created to access it. You can leave everything else set up as default, and you can click Create Bucket. Once you do, you will land inside of your new bucket. The next thing you want to do, you'll notice this section here, drag and drop files and folders that you want to upload. So let's go and get some PDF files. You want to name them all Lesson 1, Lesson 2, Lesson 3 PDF in order to match what we've coded here in your Webflow site. Later you can change it to anything you want. So I'll do that now. Okay, I've got my 3 files. I'm going to drag and drop them onto here. You can see them all listed here. Now, dragging and dropping them onto here doesn't mean they've been uploaded. What this means is it's ready for upload, and these are the 3 files. So you have to scroll all the way down and click the upload button. You can leave everything else in a default setting. Go ahead and upload them. Upload successful. All right, great. So we are here. We can click the exit button. And you see we have our 3 PDF files sitting here. If you click into one of these, you'll see you have an object URL. And this URL is publicly available, but if we click on it, you'll see that it's access denied, which is perfect. These are private buckets, and people over the open internet should never be able to access them. So that worked perfectly. And this is it. You're done. You don't have to change any of these settings. You don't have to do anything special in here. Everything will now just work. So let's go back. And when you come in here now, you can select the region the S3 bucket resides in. You can hit this little refresh button here. It'll reload all the buckets that are authenticated to access through this connection. You can see here's the bucket that I just had set up. And the path is now going to be the file that was passed up in our hidden form field. Pretty simple. Done. Now what will happen is once you're authenticated, once you're verified, we'll go download the file. And when I say download the file, we're downloading the file into Integromat. So Integromat will receive this file, and then we will send this file back to the browser in our next step. Okay, so we've downloaded the file to Integromat. Now we need to get it from Integromat back to our user's browser and have it automatically download. So the next step we're going to do is a webhook response. In here we'll give it a status of 200. You see we have a data field in the body. That's what's returned from Amazon S3. We have the file name lesson1.pdf. Let's quickly take a close look at what this data is. If we go back and look at a previous run, we can look at the data here. Here's the response. You can see this is the actual file that we're downloading, lesson1.pdf. It's encoded here in binary, but you can see that Integromat is the one receiving the file. And once Integromat receives it, we pass it to a webhook response so that the user can get it and download it to their local file system. We have some interesting headers here that we need to look at in a little bit more detail. These headers I will post in my GitHub account. The first header is going to be called content disposition. This header is going to tell the web browser, hey, there's an attachment in this response, and here's the file name for it. And the next header that we're going to add is a content type, and we're going to add the content type that we're bringing down, which is a stream. These two headers combined together is what will tell the web browser to automatically download the file instead of redirecting to a different page.